Patrick Findaro here, co-founder at Vetted Biz. Excited to have on Shane Mericle, who's the owner of 5 cell phone repair franchises across Austin, as well as one in Houston, as well as he's the founder of the Cell Phone Repair Independent Owners Association. We met earlier this month in Arizona. I had a press pass for the event held by the American Association of Franchisees and Dealers. And Shane and I had a lot of time to talk about his experience in franchising, his background before, and we thought it'd be good to have him on as a guest and talk about the good side of franchising, but also the bad side of franchising where the franchisor might be overstepping their boundaries and not have the same alignment as franchisees. So we'll leave it at that, but let's hear directly from Shane. Maybe you could tell me a little bit about your background for the audience and how you got into a cell phone repair franchise.
Sure. Yeah. So it's an interesting conversation. I'll summarize it because it could go on for a while. But my background is software engineering, specifically in the insurance industry. Basically, got tired of traveling, decided I wanted to work locally, started a business locally, had an exit, went pretty well. Wanted to open another business. Thought franchising looked like a pretty good opportunity. Did a little investigating, found this interesting little franchise called Cell Phone Repair. It was about 50, 60 franchises at the time. This is back in 2013. And like most franchisees, sort of read the franchise agreement. I don't even remember if I had an attorney review it. Yeah. And, hey, really excited. Let's get this thing going. I know how to run a business. Let's start this store and get going. It was really not a problem. It went really well for the first couple of years. We had the original franchisor who I think, everybody in franchising now understands. The original franchisor is usually your best franchisor in most cases.
So was that the founder, the person that founded the cell phone repair franchise system?
Correct. A gentleman named Jeremy Kwiterski out of, I think he was officially out of South Carolina, though. At least one of his stores in the training center was in Orlando, Florida.
Okay. And the name's awesome for SEO, I imagine, right? Cell phone repair.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Cell phone repair works really well, and it's served us well. That is, in fact, one of the biggest benefits of the franchise system is getting used to that name. Though we have had competitors that advertise in that because of the general sort of nature of cell phone repair. It can't be trademarked, so it's not really protected, though it is in our name. So, but yeah, it works really well, and I've liked having that name for a long time.
So then what happened? So the first few years, what would you say, 2013 to 2016, you're opening multiple stores at that point?
Yeah, so I owned and operated one store in South Austin, Texas. Things went really well. Our store was a high performer. I'm a, probably average business guy. I have a good sense. I wasn't coming into it as a technician trying to own and operate a business. I was a business guy trying to learn how to run a repair business. That suited me pretty well, and decided to open another store in New Braunfels, Texas. Went through another franchise agreement, FDD, everything looked great, opened the store, and then probably 6 months after opening, we were notified that the franchisor is opening another brand across the street from us. They had purchased a company called Digital Doc, and that Digital Doc store was about 600 feet from me across the road. And I immediately reached out to the franchisor. What can we do? Franchisor basically said, "We're hoping you'll work it out with that owner." I said, "Well, we're both paying you franchise royalties," and it got pretty bad. That issue was never resolved. They operated taking about half my business in that new market for 4 years.
So did the franchisor, was it still run by the founder, owned by the founder at this point, and then he rolled up another brand into his company?
No. So I had bought in 2013, opened that South Austin store, and then that franchisor had some, I think it was cash flow problems, what it was, but he needed to sell, and it was getting beyond his means. And another franchisor named Merry Meeting Group, Merry Meeting Incorporated, MMI, they go by all 3 names. They're a nested group of companies who operate some other franchise systems, bought us. The owner of that company came into our annual meeting, our first year, 2014, dressed in a suit, looked really professional. Is wow, this is a dream come true. Really excited. We're really going to expand and grow. Hey, maybe I'll open 20, 30 stores in Texas. Said all the right things. And one of the things that happened in, I think it was 2015, that they bought the Digital Doc brand. And that store was in the process of opening as a Digital Doc, which would have been at a franchise of about, I think, 30 or 40 stores. But when they got brought into CPR, they weren't allowed to use our name, CPR, so they had to stay under the Digital Doc brand, but they basically had all the benefits of our franchise
So
without the
same
name.
product, services.
Identical.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
different
Okay.
color scheme. Other than that, pretty much identical.
And it
So
just
that
like
caused a lot
you
of,
guys basically split the market. So if you're making
correct.
500K, you each make 250. Was it something
Yeah,
like that?
yeah, exactly like that. Except it was more like making 250K and split it at 125, which
Yeah,
really
and with
made
a
both
lease and
stores.
everything, it's just like, shit, why am I doing this? Like,
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It was marginally profitable. In many months, it was not profitable at all. We paid that store ran neutral for about 4 years, revenue neutral, I should
when
say.
you add in your time, like you were a software engineer before, your time is valuable. So it's like
Yeah.
every minute, every hour you spend on that, even if it's running flat, it's more like running at a loss of like 50K a year because your time's super valuable.
Exactly. Yeah. One of the problems with a lot of franchisees, after being in the founder of the IOA, I obviously speak with franchisees probably 3 to 5 a day in conversations, good and bad. But there is just a large gap in our industry between people who are repair technicians and people know how to run businesses. And so few understand how to value their time. They think they're making a profit when in actuality they're just paying themselves a salary. And in some cases, a really
We're
small
rolling out.
salary.
I will have to share with you. We finished creating a calculator to calculate how much your time is worth. So say you're like your job, like what you do for 50 hours a day, how much your time's worth, $10, $50 an hour, whatever. And then your incremental time. So say you are working a full-time job and you want to have a side gig, whether that side gig's a franchise or not, your incremental time is usually a lot more valuable. At least it is for me. Like if I'm
Yeah.
working 50 hours, 60 hours a week, if I have to work more than that and not spend time with my wife, spend time with my daughter, not see friends, I got to get paid really well for that incremental time. So that's something that
Yeah.
we should be publishing next month, and I'll have to send over for you for your feedback.
I look forward to seeing it. That'll be, I mean, one of the upsides to me having the background in IT is that I've spent a lot of time sort of grinding through numbers, not just
Yeah.
financials, but repair numbers. What are the profitable repairs? What's not profitable? Should you sell more accessories? Should you not sell more accessories? Just constantly trying to evaluate. In my opinion, a lot of the things that our franchisors should be providing for us.
But you're kinda doing it on your own. Like, right now, like, what does the franchisor provide? Is it the brand? Like, what value are you deriving today from the franchisor?
Yeah, that's really tough to quantify. I've always said that there were three key components to the value we were getting from our franchisor inside of CPR, and one is the access to the network, so we can talk to one another about confidential topics. That's
Nice.
huge. And we have a really open network. We have some social media pages where there's a lot of conversations about good, bad, ugly. So that's, number one. Number two is probably the brand, that cell phone repair brand that you were talking about a minute ago. That's big.
It's
We used
instant
to have really,
credibility. It's not just
yeah,
some
and we
dude,
used,
like, operating out of, like, some 200 square foot, like,
correct,
shady
correct.
building doing repairs.
And there's a lot of those.
Yeah.
Less now over the last 12 to 24 months, but
That's
definitely
true.
a lot of a lot of shady stuff was going down in the past.
It's like all cash.
Ca- Casio cash registers next to the front desk. And then the third value that we got was a partnership with Zag, which is a well-known you know U.S. if not international brand. Uh, we were we struck a deal. I say we, the franchise struck a deal with Zag, I guess 4 years ago, where we are their repair center. So they have Zag stores that do Zag branded franchises that do repairs and sell screen protection and do warranties on that screen protection. And then there's the CPR network, which most CPR stores opted into that brand, into that relationship. Has been really good over the years. We've had some stumbles lately with them that have not been good, but all in all, that was a pretty powerful tool for getting people in the door. So when Google AdWords shut down advertising in this repair space, electronics repair space, no one's really sure if that was at Apple or Samsung's request, but at any rate, we're not allowed to advertise on AdWords, and
What a
that
joke.
really hurt our industry badly because my store spent upwards of $2,000 a month running ads on AdWords. So
Yeah, it's like
having,
Apple. I mean, there's been allegations. I don't know if it's been proven, but that like Apple wants the battery to kind of deplete so you get a new iPhone after 4 years and makes it super expensive to repair. And
yeah, I don't know if that's true. Certainly, the batteries degrade over time. Some of the issues is that with the whole theory about Apple wanting to, basically make those phones non-usable after some number of years. I'm sure that works well for Apple. I don't know that they're intentionally doing it. It's true in computers too. If you bought a Dell in 1990, by 1994, the software is just driving the processors on it really hard. The GPU,
yeah,
the processors start overheating, everything starts to degrade. So, it was true for any electronics, and
that's
handhelds
true.
are not different.
And then I thought what was an interesting group discussion. I don't know if you were in that one at the AAFD leadership event, but was on the collective purchasing power and
Yeah,
how unless the franchisees team together, like Subway had a co-op and it was the franchisees that led together that formed a pact to then negotiate with the suppliers.
yeah,
Franchisors, there might be some, and I know there are some that will pass the discounts on to the franchisees and really act as that co-op. But more often than not, there's rebates, or at least they're able to get pretty significant rebates to supplement the royalty income that they're deriving.
exactly. Yeah, an extra 1 or 2% on the royalty annuity they've got. I mean, one of the things that was really apparent to me after listening to everyone introduce themselves at the last AAFD convention is one, basically private equity is buying everything in the franchise world, and two, they're cutting costs pretty extreme, right? Cutting leadership in a lot of cases, and cutting their costs, and then
Support to
as
you,
a
right? If
yeah,
there's best
yeah,
practices on repairs or training your technicians, probably you got more support in 2013 where they were really helping you find talent, groom talent, where now you're kind of on your own, right?
yeah, they. I don't know that maybe early on in the first year or two they were helping with that, but in the last 8 years, there's not been much help in terms of procuring talent. That we don't even have common job descriptions that we use. You'd think the franchisor would give you some, canned job descriptions you can put up in Indeed or somewhere, but there's not.
And so playing devil's advocate, you had your first location went well, second location where a competitor of the same essential franchise group encroaching on your territory. Then you decided to still open up 3 more locations, or did you take over a struggling store? Tell me a little bit
Yeah, I
about going from 2 to 5.
Yeah, so at two, I was, when the deal went down with Digital Doc, things got pretty cross. I was not a happy
Yeah.
franchisee, and I had begun doing some of the early work to figure out how to get an association formed, that kind of thing. But an owner in Round Rock, Texas, which is about 25 miles north of my South Austin store, was closing and needed to get out of the store, get out of the lease, et cetera. So I bought that store, good price. I paid him, I think, what was a fair price. It was a good price to take over a store. Spent a fair bit of money remodeling it and getting it up and running. And that store's been performing reasonably well since buying it. And then sort of had similar things happen with the other stores I bought. There was a store in Houston, similar. The owner was exiting at the end of his 10 years, wasn't able to sell it. I didn't really want to be in Houston, but it was a low price. So I said, all right, I'm going to go ahead and buy it. At the time, there was a lot of conversations inside the franchise about this relationship with T-Mobile. The new franchisor had taken over a company called Assurant, big
Oh,
public
yeah.
company. Once again, just like with MMI, Owners are very excited. Hey, great! This thing with MMI went horribly bad. They basically began giving away franchises to try to grow the network
Was it like
size,
what,
and that
independent conversions? So going after someone
correct.
that had their own cell phone repair?
Yeah, the organic growth had slowed of franchise count, and they needed to get it bigger. I'm sure the owner of MMI was looking for a way to, drive value, make it look more profitable. And it grew the number count. So now inside of CPR, there's what is known as, conversion stores and legacy stores. I would be a legacy owner, even though I do have a couple of, well, I don't have conversions. I bought other stores, so I'm not really a
And are the
conversion in any
terms the
way.
same, or do they have discounts? They don't pay the franchise fee?
Yeah, they don't pay they don't pay the same royalty structure that we do. They have a
Oh, wow.
capped royalty.
Okay.
So those royalties are capped at $0, $500, $1,000, and $1,500 per
Okay.
month. Versus somebody like me, a legacy owner, it used to be a 6%. It was dropped to 5.85% uncapped royalties.
So
So
you might be
two of my
paying what a month? Like 20K a month, 10K
well,
across your stores
yeah. So this
or
year,
on
I
an
just looked
annual
the other
basis?
day. I paid 64,000 through the end of last month in royalties.
Huh.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
I
at,
made
at, at the end of the year, it'll probably be of 80K, 90K potentially.
yeah. If we have a good November, December, it could be upwards of 90K. Subsequently, my net profit at the moment is sitting at about 38,000 across
Across
five
five
stores.
stores.
Correct.
And I understand you're not really working day to day in the locations. Like how many
Correct.
hours would you say you allocate to these five, to this business of basically these five
Probably do
owners?
20 to 40 hours a week, but not
Okay.
in store. I work from home. It's really hard because I do so much work with the IOA, and that
Well,
time is sort of
that's
blended.
serious time that you're allocating 20, 30, 40 hours a week to this business of having five cell phone repair franchises. And in your prior job, I'm sure you were making a lot more than that. Now it's 38K.
38K, yeah. Yeah.
What motivates you to keep going, and like why not potentially find a buyer to buy all five or buy one of them?
I am actively looking for a buyer. And in fact, at the recent convention earlier this week for CPR, I talked to some owners that may be interested in
Nice.
trying to acquire my stores. I'm hopeful, but
For the business model to work, do you need someone that works in the store like 60 hours a week? Like how could someone be clearing 100K across a few stores, or is it just really tough to clear that number?
I think it is difficult to clear that number. There probably are a few owners who are getting in up over that 100K without working in the store. So I think there's a couple of ways this model works. One is if you're a single owner operator, you're working in the store, you're paying yourself a salary. You don't really care too much about the net profit number. And in fact, if you had net profit, you're probably just going to roll that into a salary that you pay yourself anyway. So I think you can make decent money doing that at the moment. The other way I think would probably be to get up over 20 or 30 stores where you truly are just hands off and letting the business operate itself, so to speak. And you're not going to make a whole lot per store, maybe, 1,000, 2,000 per month per store.
But it
But
adds
in
up,
the
I guess, if
aggregate,
you have a
it
lot.
adds up.
That's
A
interesting. So
franchisor,
it's either you're really small and maybe you're making 80K, you're working in the business and it's probably a top performing store, but you as the owner is working it day to day, or you got to get to that 20 mark and be
correct.
really a truly professional organization.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I think the other big indicator for me, and I haven't validated this, but it feels like the stores that are in smaller markets, so rural markets, tend to have more success. One, they don't have a lot of competition.
Yeah.
Two, they have, you hear these rents of $400 and $800 a month, and I'm like, my rents are 3,800 to 5,000 a month.
Well, also if it's like owner operated, the guy is part of the local community and people know
Yeah,
him as the one to go to for technology repairs.
yeah. Interestingly, the franchisor doesn't really value those stores, right? They're looking, because of these OEM big national contracts, they're looking for more coverage in, heavy urban markets where, if I tried to secure 1,000 square foot space, even a 600 square foot space, one, that's really hard to find, and two, it's going to be exorbitant the cost. And then how do you get access? You need, surface level parking near the store. Otherwise, people don't really want to come in. You just get into this whole host of problems where it makes it really difficult to work to make the store profitable.
And tell me a little bit about the advocacy that you're doing as the founder of the Independent Owners Association for cell phone repair.
The Cell Phone Repair Association has done a couple of, we've actually spent a lot of time driving some value for owners. Some examples: we've done trainings a couple of times. It was clear repair volumes were not going to pay all the bills. We need other ways to other forms of income at the store, whether it be accessories, device sales. And when we kicked off, we had two big initiatives. One initiative was to add Square processing for our members.
Nice.
Very quickly, the franchisor who had previously been uninterested in entertaining Square. So when we did that, the franchisor within weeks secured a deal to get Square Square credit card processing for all franchisees. It was a big deal. I mean, Square's a good processor. It has a fixed rate, which we really liked. But the biggest issue is that it allows you to take tips on credit card transactions, which at the
Yeah.
time was not
So
that
that can add
common.
what, another 10%?
Bingo. Yeah,
And big
it's a big
employee
value.
engagement. Employees are probably
Employee,
pumped.
all that. Yeah, and it helps supplement their income, right? They can get
Yeah.
tips now where, if I'm paying them 15 an hour, now they're making 18 or 19 an hour.
Solid.
So big value to them, and they like it. It motivates them at the counter, et cetera. So we had that initiative, and then we kicked off a training in Austin, Texas, which I thought was going to have about 10 people show up. I think we ended up with 120 people at the training, something like that, to learn how to do device sales and device financing sales, which was a big move for the CPR franchise system. He's a board member now. At the time, he was just a member. A gentleman named Toby Paul, who sort of, figured out how to make this model work at the stores, came in and trained everybody, and it changed the direction of the franchise substantially. So stores went from making, 50,000, maybe upper end 60, 70,000 a month, to making 100 to 150, in some cases 170,000 a month,
That's a
with the
huge
addition
increase.
of device sales. Yeah.
And that's probably a nice margin business if you're getting compensated from the finance partner, or if you just, or maybe the finance partner is just helping you sell more devices at the
Yeah.
end of the day.
Yeah, they are. It's anywhere from 35 to 45% gross profit on device sales, which, sounds really good, but after you pay the bills, it's probably contributes something like 10% net profit when it's all said and done.
What's your favorite product or service that you're offering that's just very profitable and scalable?
You know, Common iPhone repairs are bread and butter, high volume, reasonable profit. So those are nice. iPhone XR and iPhone 11 are our lifeblood at the moment. Mega high repair volumes, pretty straightforward repair, low incidence of RM rework. Big issue in our industry is reworking the repair. And we have, the announcement at the recent CPR convention was that Mobile Centrics has become our new part supplier. They purchased our old part supplier, which was Mobile Defenders.
And do you
And
have
we
a
had
right
the
to select the part supplier? How does that work?
No, it's mandated by the franchisor. And it was previously mandated to be Mobile Defenders, which was owned 51% owned by our previous franchise or gentleman named John Davies, who owned MMI. The classic, we guarantee you low pricing, we're going to do group buy rates, et cetera. And then, there's part plus 10%, part plus 15%. Then it got to be part plus 20% plus $1, part plus 20% plus $2. It just kind of grew and got out of control. And at some point early on, they decided they weren't going to disclose the cost and structure of how those prices were set. But it was pretty clear that if you can go buy a part as an off the street guy from Mobile Centrics for $30 less than you could buy the same part from your preferred mandated parts supplier, something was grossly out of alignment. Again,
I'm
another
sure
contributor to our.
franchisors aren't going to like this, but it's important that franchisees kind of team together early to make sure that they have that collective bargaining. Because a lot of the themes that we've talked about today and with other franchisees is, yes, the brand and the support from the franchisor franchisor is valuable, but that they get more benefit from the collective knowledge and the group of franchisees to elevate their business. So if franchisees aren't together sharing information, working on these deals like Toby, and learning from other franchisees on what's worked, and trying to get their, well, one thing is increasing top line revenue, but you also want to work on controlling the costs. So if you
Yeah,
don't start early, it seems like, if especially with change of owners, you could get taken advantage of.
for sure. Yeah, my recommendation to anyone getting into a franchise, if you don't have an association, get to work creating an association earlier rather than later, because if your franchise is a good franchise, they're going to want to work with you, right? Like, hey, I need to hear what your problems are at the store so we can help solve them with you, as opposed to when things finally get cross between the franchisees and the franchisor. Now you've got to form a franchise association. There's a lot of angst about, what's this association going to do? What are their legal? That's really the situation we were in. And it was unfortunate because we were forming our association at the exact same time that the latest franchisor, company called Assurant, was buying us. They had actually initiated the transaction already and bought part of the company. We didn't know that yet. They wouldn't announce until later in the year. But we basically struck that square deal, formed the association in the same month that our franchisor announced that they had sold to Assurant. And again, seemed like a very positive thing. We were really excited. Big public company. They're going to drive claims to us. It should increase their volumes. We were anticipating a lot of really good things, and we reached out as an association to the franchise, to the new franchisor, and they basically told us, "Yeah, don't talk to us. If you have any questions or issues, go talk to the management company," which happened to be the previous franchisor. So that kind of set the tone. We reached out. We tried several times to reach out to them and establish a relationship between our association and them, but I think they were
Do
just
they
concerned
just
that
want to deal with people want they just want to have the franchisor and individual relationship should problems arise, or should there be
yeah.
suggestions?
I don't really know what drove their decision making around that. Probably the previous franchisor informed them that, hey, this association is going to be problematic for you. You're not going to like talking to them. The things that Bob Purvin points to regularly when he talks to franchisees about what's going on. So I think, had they had that conversation with us early on and engaged us, the whole nature of what's happened inside of this franchise could have been different. We were really geared and excited to work with them and look for some common ways that we can, they're going to make money no matter what. They're a big company, 12, $14 billion company, but ways that they can help us, and point specifically to how they can help us in the store, which is a big problem for us. Yeah. So that was really disappointing. And
And it's like, really look, I mean, how many locations do you have right now of the cell phone repair franchise?
it's hard to say. It's not really clear. There's 477 listed in the latest FDD. I suspect that number is somewhere between 385 and 405 actual
Okay.
stores in operation.
So, I mean, it seems like if that owner operator is not making more than 5K a month, then the model is not sustainable.
Yeah.
Where if the owner operator model is going to be the one you go for, he needs to be making more than 5K a month,
Yeah.
and then
What you
the guy
said.
with 5 locations needs to be making 10,
Yeah.
20K a
Yeah.
month, because there's all these expenses, and you guys have a lease, you have a franchise agreement for 10 years, all this like liability where the labor market's 3.6 unemployment. It's like, shit, why am I doing this? I could just get a job and make 10K, 12K, or much more depending on your background. So I
Yeah.
wonder if
Those
the
are all the
franchisor has thought about that and kind of just put themselves in the franchisee's shoes and be like, can I make 6K from this activity?
those are the things that I wake up at 4 in the morning thinking about, like, what am I doing? I can make so much more money with way less risk and way less stress, in the IT world, in the tech world, not even in the tech world. Honestly, I can make more money than that managing a Whataburger in my local town.
Oh yeah,
Um,
those kill it. I think they do like 5 mil plus in
oh my gosh.
sales per
Yeah.
location.
food service is just,
Classic Texas staple.
oh yeah, yeah. And I love Whataburger. So the
Yeah.
problem is I'd probably gain 200 pounds working there. I love burgers, and I especially love Whataburgers. So yeah, so we really had a lot of trouble trying to open a line of communication to them. They weren't really receptive. They formed some associate. If you look at our franchise and you read Bob Pervin's book, The Franchise
Yeah, I
Fraud,
read that a few months
it
back.
you can almost just overlay our franchise into that book. All the classic signs, like, we're going to have councils. The councils are ineffective. They don't really
Yeah.
do anything. It sort of serves as a back channel communication path for the franchisor. And then they formed what's called a franchise something council, franchise council, owners council. I can't remember. It's the most recent iteration of committees or councils of the franchise. But again, they sort of set the tone, tempo, they set the agenda. You really have to be disruptive to push your agenda into that council and get them to respond. It's been okay, but not as effective as just working one-on-one with the owners association, right? We have an association built for that. Let's use it.
There's some things that the franchisor wants, there's some things that you want more of, but at the end of the day, if franchisees are not making money, it doesn't work, and
Correct.
it's gonna tank. And we've seen that with Subway, where they're closing like 1,500 locations every year, and it's just, once you start that downward trajectory, unless there's change in the franchisor and the franchisee, probably ideally through the association are fully aligned, it's really difficult to get out of that rut.
Correct. Yeah. So it's the complexity, right? I mean, it seems like, it shouldn't be that hard to say, hey, is anybody making net profit here?
Yeah.
And, just do a poll and see. The problem is, in our situation, so many owners are not business savvy. And I don't say that in a mean way. I mean, they
Bit of
just,
a
they're
shame too,
repaired.
where it's
Yeah,
like, you signed up for this, you signed a lease, you told your friends, like, "Yeah, like, I'm opening up this store, I quit my corporate job." And it's like, "Oh, shit, like, I'm not making any money, or, like, I have to now rely on my spouse, and, like, I don't know how to get out of this."
yeah, yeah. So there's a lot of pride involved. Owners don't want to discuss, that they're not making money.
Yeah.
If you get them in one-on-one private conversations, you can get a better sense of where they
Well,
sit.
that's what I loved about, joining, as Bob was nice enough to give me a press pass for your AAFD event, and just the conversation I had with franchisees. And it's like really night and day. You have some franchisees that are way above 1 million. I talked to one that's, close to 30 mil in revenue and just is killing it.
Yeah,
And then talking to franchisees where they're doing sales of like 150K or 120K in sales, and they work 60 hours a week and they don't make any money.
yeah,
And I asked, like, did you know about that? And then they didn't have the right questions at times to ask the franchisees. And then people also spin it, where even if they're struggling, they want to put their best
yeah,
face. So
yeah, yeah,
this one group, it's like this one education chain that was there. I'm just like, wow, this is wild. There's like over 100 franchisees, and I've spoken to numerous franchisees, and like no one's making money. So it's just like, when's it going to implode? Unless there's like crazy course correction, like,
yeah.
that business model does not make sense.
Yeah, that's, similar story here. I mean, I talk to owners all the time as the founder of the IOA, and, still a board member. I'm probably by far the most active franchisee in the network. I own all the social media pages and admin them, and, make
Nice.
sure everyone's talking and playing nice, etc. But yeah, getting them to just say, are you making money, is really difficult. And in some cases, I think they just don't know. Like, hey, I had 3 grand in my checking account at the end of the month last month. But do you have any credit card debt? Oh yeah, yeah, I got 20 grand in credit card debt. Well, then you really didn't make any money last month. Like, those are the kinds of
Seems
conversations
like
that
probably the
you end up having.
franchisor could help with, financial literacy and really
Correct.
pushing that. So it's like for everyone to
We
really understand the numbers and have benchmarks and friendly competition.
Yeah.
If Toby's killing it in Florida, like, there's probably some competition where you also want to be doing these campaigns and do better than him.
Yep. And back to the IOA question about what values we've provided. So We had another training last year where we got into a little of that financial literacy, like how do you read a P&L? What is a P&L? We had a session on that. We had a session on how to, work with our point of sale system. It's fairly complicated, managing inventory. And then we had another short session on how to sell devices, how to finance
Nice.
devices in your store, that kind of thing. So really inexpensive. We had actually we had two sponsors. Put it in a hotel in downtown Dallas, and I think non-IOA members were invited to come. I think they paid $150. Members, I think members were free. Maybe they paid $50. I don't remember.
Okay. But they probably get like 5, 10K plus of value from that.
Oh yeah. Well, everyone said, at the convention, like, I wish we could do this more often. We have no training in the store. Interesting story. I own 5 stores, and until last month, uh, we had never had a visit from corporate. We've never had an employee from the company, any one of the 3 franchisors, come in the store
And 9 years?
in 9 years.
It's
Yeah,
absurd. You
they
could
do
be
have
like
some.
selling like supplements or some random products from the store and just not
Yeah,
going with the cell phone repair brand at all.
one of the stores that I bought that was closing actually was a CBD sales store.
Exactly. Yeah.
It was filled with rancid CBD, and the store smelled horrible because it had been sitting on the shelves for so long. It was bad. But yeah, they have independent auditors that come in and will audit the store. They take some pictures. They don't really know what they're doing. They'll ask you, hey, do you have Samsung parts? No, we don't have any Samsung parts. You got 10 grand of Samsung parts in the back. The frustrating part of that is that, the only contact in my store is this auditor who's, looking for problems in my store.
Yeah,
He's
trying to
pretty.
collect more royalty, not help you build top line and then bottom line.
Yeah, yeah, generally just not helping us. That's frustrating. And I've been begging for probably 7 years, can you please just send some reps out to come chat with us, show us how to organize the store, how to process tickets, give us some updates on what software we need to be using. None of that. It's really, really tough.
For prospective franchisees, any suggestions? Like, you had mentioned, probably didn't use an attorney. Probably they should use a franchise attorney and pay the few $1,000s to review the agreement, negotiate on their behalf. Are there any other things that maybe you would have done differently exploring franchises
Yeah.
or particularly this opportunity?
Yeah. I mean, I'd probably do just about everything different. I would have negotiated the franchise agreement very hard, and then I probably would have had a lot of red flags when they were not willing to adjust it much. As the attorneys on stage said at the AFD, choose 3 things and we'll change those for you. But fundamentally, they're not going to change the franchise agreement. I probably would not sign a current franchise agreement for most franchise systems based on what I saw and heard at the AAFD, right? Like they're just so oppressive. And now removing the implied goodwill from the contract, like, gosh, what are we signing here? Is it even a contract? This is basically indentured servitude contract. So my advice to a franchisee considering this, or any franchises as a investment, would be to see if they have a association and engage that association, because they're going to tell you straight away that hey, there's big problems going on here you need to be aware of, or no, we have a really good relationship with our franchisor and we really like this business.
Or it might be like wait and see. We're fighting the franchisor on this, and we think they're going
Sure.
to remove this from the franchise agreement, but stay on the sidelines, and then maybe wait till this is resolved with the franchise agreement that looks better.
Yeah, yeah. There's this phase during your purchasing of a franchise where you're supposed to go, talk to and visit stores. Of course, they're not allowed to tell you which stores to visit, the franchisor, but there's a lot of, suggestions on owners that might be good to talk with, high performing franchisees and things like that. And of course, those are always friendly to the franchisor. Some cases in our franchise, a lot of those guys are paid by the franchisor to be regional
Yeah, I've heard of
managers. And
numerous systems that compensate the franchisee if the candidate moves forward, which seems like
yeah,
a pretty big conflict of interest. But I'm a big fan too of talking to former franchisees. Hey, you
oh,
left the
that's a
system. Did you cease to operate? Like you just closed down? Or what was the resale value? You invested, 100, 120K in the CPR. Did you sell for 250? Did you sell for a nice gain? And then it's
Yeah.
like, no, like I sold for 20K and just gave the keys away. It's like, shoot, like if you're putting all this time in the business, like you want to make an income and you want to make a nice capital gain after
Yeah.
3 to
So
7+ years.
I'll actually give you a plug right now because, if I were going to do another franchise now, first thing I would do is go to Vetted Biz because,
Thanks.
digging around through there over the last couple of weeks since the AFD convention, uh, all kinds of good stuff. Top franchises, bad franchises. I mean, you're doing a lot of the evaluation work that many of the franchisees would like to do, but don't know how to get to the data, right? They don't know where I can go download an FDD. So having it right there available, yeah, really nice. I could actually
Thanks.
have an attorney or friend attorney review the last FDD on file, even though it's not the one officially in my hands. And he can tell you, yeah, be careful. There's a lot of red flags here, or no, it looks really good. It looks like a good opportunity.
I think a big thing too is what to look out for. So if you can't compare apples to apples, like if the failure rate's 8% over the last 3 years, is that good or bad?
Yeah,
Well, the average is 11%. So it's like if the failure rate cease to operate, people, just closing down, it's 40% over 3 years. I mean, that's a huge red flag. We're working too on including at least a calculation how many complaints are against a franchisor from the information that the FTC collects directly through the FTC complaints as well as other sources, as well as litigation.
yeah,
So you can see a big red flag, and I mean, I think most people in franchising are well intended, but you do have these bad actors that hop from one brand to one brand, and it's good to see, if they've had bankruptcy or if they're super litigious. Like there are
yeah.
a couple of franchisors going through the FDD item 3, I believe, where it discloses litigation. They push franchisees into bankruptcy, and it's all there. They're collecting royalty fees for 20 years or 15 years, and the guy goes bankrupt. And
Oh,
then you go to item 21, and it's usually exhibit C, and you can see the income statement of the franchisor, and C is clearing way more than a million. And it's
yeah.
just like, this is not right. Like, what country do we live in where you can
It's
have middle class or middle class Americans totally get taken advantage of from
My
super
guess
wealthy
is
corporations?
because the franchisors have money and in many cases they own many franchise systems. So, it's a case of sort of classic regulatory capture where they own the
Yeah,
regulators, I use that term loosely, but they're the ones defining what the regulators do and how they treat this industry. The franchisees are all individuals. So you don't have any collective power unless you form an association. Even with an association, it's really difficult to get initiatives moved forward, get funding for them. I mean, in our case, our franchise fees are really low. And even then, we have franchisees who are like, I just can't pay it anymore. I'm like, we're at $1 a day right now. When you can't afford $1 a day, things are going south pretty quick.
on the regulator side, that's an interesting comment you bring up because I think it's all well intentioned, but what happened, like I looked at the Starbucks license agreement and it's like 30 pages. It's not a franchise, but a
Uh-huh.
standard franchise disclosure document with the franchise agreement is 200 to 500 pages. And a lot of that's just for the franchisor to cover their ass and disclose, 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 disclose. So it's like really difficult to like have them hold them liable for anything. And
Yep.
I think it was well intentioned having all these items and what needs to be disclosed, and it can be super helpful. But at the same time, what consumer can go through that, and it just allows the franchisor to say, put everything on the table, so that there potentially can't be future complaints, as well as the financing side. The franchisor is not lending money to the franchisee to open up, granting whatever. There's minimal financing from the franchisor, and it's the government, SBA loans, that are oftentimes funding the franchise investment. Or people do a 401k rollover. So another instrument that the government's created that should be used for retirement and invested in stocks that people roll into a franchise, or the SBA debt that they can pay what sometimes now franchise fee of 60K, taking out an SBA loan, and the franchisees, left with the bag. But this mechanism allows franchisors to charge very high franchise fees because then customer is going to get a government backed loan and will be able to finance it or roll over from this government created retirement structure.
Yeah. So yeah, when you start digging around through the franchise agreements and the FDD to some extent. I mean, it's just when I looked at that original agreement, my all the business I had ever done in my life was based on good faith, right? Like if you and I
Right.
are going to contract to do some work, I'm going to base that on the idea that Patrick's going to operate in good faith, and we're going to both
Yeah.
work toward the best intentions of this contract. Never did I expect that the contract would be turned into an instrument that's used against the franchisees.
The
uh,
bylaws of how it's going to be set.
yeah, it's tough. There's very little recourse for a franchisee. Literally, I think the only recourse you have, unless you're a wealthy individual, is to join an association and use the association as the counterbalance to the franchisor's, weight and heft.
In terms of like advice for franchisors that want to have a great, healthy working relationship with franchisees, any things that you would suggest based on your experience?
Yeah, I mean, number one is open up the communication channels. This is actually good advice, in my opinion, for any company, not just a franchisor, but open up the franchise communication channels, so much so that it's almost painful, right? Like I always use the analogy, if there's a problem, I don't want to tuck it under the table. I don't want to put it under the rug. Let's pull it out, put it in the middle of the table, and put four bright lights on it and get everybody around the table poking it, looking at it, figuring out how to solve the problem. I think so many franchisors just tend to put it under the table and use their franchise agreement to say, look, you don't have any rights here, so go away. In our franchise's case, they're common. The previous franchisors' famous words were, sue me. I don't lose litigation. And you're like, well, okay. Eventually, it drove us to saying, okay, we're going to form an association. I guess we'll have to sue you. Open communications, listen to the franchisees. The problem is there's a lot of, immature is maybe not the right word, but, there's a lot of junior franchisees who will complain and bitch and gripe about, ancillary stuff. A lot of it's just general business complaints. And you can discard those, but when there's serious franchisees stepping up and raising real legitimate issues, don't push those away. In fact, you need to actually pull them in and let's look at how we solve this problem as a group rather than hoping the problem goes away.
So it sounds like over communicate, and check your ego. The
Yeah, I
franchisee
don't
is in
even
front
know
of
that
the
it's
final consumer, and there's amazing feedback that should kick all the way up and then be disseminated back down.
yeah. I don't know that it's, like in our case now, we're owned by a public company. I don't think there's any ego there. I think they just are driving toward, they're a big machine that produces income.
You
I don't think
guys
there's a lot of,
probably contribute like 2% of their revenue. I was looking at it's like a
not
crazy
even.
market
It's
cap company. You guys are kind of a dime in their bucket, penny in their bucket.
Yeah, I always joke that they didn't buy us for revenue, and they definitely did not buy us for revenue. They bought us for pins in a map, right? They need to go land national accounts and you know sell products and services to OEM, Apple, Samsung, ATT, T-Mobile, those kinds of guys. So they need a network of repair stores sitting behind them, and it doesn't really matter to them if we're profitable or not. I don't think, at least before the association, I don't think it mattered whether we were profitable or not. They just, as long as they stay there as a pin on the map.
You were a customer, and they didn't care if the customer did well or not.
Yeah, to some extent. I don't know that they cared. I don't want to say that they didn't care, but I just, I don't think it really even registered on their radar what was happening inside the stores, other than are you treating our customers well, with respect or whatever, and does the store look swept and clean?
Well, Shane, I've learned a lot today. Our conversations in Arizona. We're filming this. It's September 30th. We met earlier this month in Arizona. I learned a lot from you as well as the other franchisees. There's a lot of positive, and there's an amazing potential for the franchising business model, and especially that knowledge share with the franchisee. And if the franchisor helps, facilitate that knowledge share, it can be an amazing business model. And there's franchises where franchisees across the board are making a lot of money, but there is a negative side of franchising, and people deserve to know, and prospective franchisees deserve to know, and franchisors that maybe are doing the right thing or those that are doing the wrong thing should know what problems can arise.
So parting thoughts: if you're a franchisee considering buying a franchise system, when you think you've done enough work, when you think you've contacted enough people, double down and contact more people. Dig a little deeper. If there's something that looks silly, dig into it. Don't pass it over. Take it serious. I do think there's some, clearly from Vetted Biz, I can tell there's other franchise systems out there that are doing really well, performing well, and profitable for the franchisees. So I don't know if I've given up completely on the idea of franchising, but I do think there are some opportunities out there. I agree with you.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, there's some amazing opportunities where the payback can be in 2 years, 3 years, and that's vetted by talking to existing franchisees. And there's other opportunities where the payback period's 10, 20 plus years. And it should be very clear before you invest in some huge full service restaurant that if you invest 2.5 million and you're only making 100K or 150K, it's going to take a long time to get your money back.
Yeah. Well, so it's hard to do as a prospective franchisee, but dig into net profit is what I would say. Like, find a franchisee who's willing to share their P&L with you and show you what their net profit numbers look like. Bob Pervin, actually, from the president of the AFD, founder, I was complaining at one point that gross profits look really good. My stores will do something like 2.5 million this year. But gross profits do not correlate to net profits. Sometimes it's the franchisee's poor operation. Sometimes it's the fact that it's just not possible to squeeze any money out of the company. So I think more franchise systems should be forced to do the investigative work to show what the net profit looks like, low end, high end, mid range, whatever. And to date, they will tell you, we're not allowed to disclose that. The reality is they don't want to disclose it in most cases. Yeah, and it's hard to get to. It's hard to discern what's
and there
owner-derived
are add backs.
benefit.
Someone might have a company, a personal car that they use for corporate means to visit the stores. So you do have ad backs, but what are the ad backs? 20K, 30K a year? It's not going to jump up like 150K. So they're, net profit, yes, the owner might be benefiting more, but that benefit, it's not an insane amount. And it's a nice amount. It could be 20K, 30K. But if the owner is benefiting like 100K, then they're probably doing something a little fishy there through the business.
Yeah, that's where we sit. I spend a lot of time with the Owners Association. I do sort of enjoy the work. The engagement in DC was pretty interesting to me. What Keith Miller's doing for the AAFD is, I think, underappreciated work. I hope that Vetted Biz can expand their offering to give us franchisees and prospective franchisees more perspective on, what it is we're actually buying and what we're investing in. By the way, one other thing that I think the IOA, owners associations could do that would help would be to use your funds to hire an attorney and give reviews of the franchise agreement that a prospective franchisee could then get at no cost, as opposed to paying $2, $3, $5,000 to an attorney to get a one-off review.
200 people. And I mean, that's going to be pennies to negotiate the terms for all future agreements.
Yeah. So we have that in the IOA. We've a competent franchise law firm review our franchise agreement. They actually reviewed 4 agreements for us and gave us opinions, redlined opinions on what to be careful of. And we can share that with our members. It's kind of nice.
Well, Shane, this has been a pleasure. What usually is like a 30-minute or 40-minute conversation, we're nearing an hour, but it was a lot of great information that I learned a lot. And I think most people tuning in are going to take some great key takeaways, whether a prospective franchisee, franchise vendor, franchise brand, private equity investor. There's a lot there to digest. So Shane, really appreciate it again.
Thank you, Patrick. I appreciate it. Thanks for the work you're doing. And let me know if I can ever help you.
Thanks.